Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Tracy Alexander.
And I'm Aaron Porras. Coming up in today's newscast, cracking down on the COVID-19 hotspots, Israeli police shut down more cities as infection numbers skyrocket.
The chief rabbinate pushes back at Israel's attorney general, threatening to strike if he's made to give women the same training as men to sit rabbinical exams.
And what the meat? The Israeli invention printing plant-based protein.
Well, no one is immune to the coronavirus, as Israel's third largest city, Haifa, is now learning. As infection numbers surge around the country, the northern city, which has been largely untouched by COVID-19, could now be seeing their lucky streak come to an end, with the number of active cases on the rise.
This as Israel begins to clamp down on cities with high infection rates. Nittany Manson reports.
The numbers are going up and the cities are being locked down. Cabinet ministers overnight approving new closures on neighborhoods in Lod and Ashdod, the latest hotspots for coronavirus infections, to see shutdowns. All cities in lockdown will last for 7 days. Traffic in and out will be limited along with opening of businesses, but each area will be given exact guidelines from the health ministry. As Israel logs its highest single-day tally since the beginning of the pandemic, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Benny Gantz convening the coronavirus cabinet today to discuss tighter restrictions on gatherings. Netanyahu suggesting posting undercover police at weddings to ensure guests are following hygiene rules. And the controversial Shin Bet phone tracking scheme is back. The Israeli parliament approving new legislation overnight allowing the security service to trace the movement of COVID-19 carriers for the next 3 weeks until a more detailed bill is drafted. The death toll rising to 322 after another fatality Wednesday evening. Of the more than 26,000 cases since the pandemic's start, more than 8,600 of them are active and some 58 in serious condition. The ultra-Orthodox city of Bnei Brak cordoning off one of its streets after dozens of yeshiva students were diagnosed with the virus. And this comes after a new report shows the rate of infections within the ultra-Orthodox community is double the rest of the population. And now yeshiva administrators hope to move their students to one of the government-run coronavirus quarantine hotels. And now the real hit to the hip pocket starting to show. Pushback has already begun as the finance ministry looks to cut billions of shekels from salaries and benefits in the public sector, reportedly to the tune of cutting some $13 billion from the state budget over 3 years, including lowering civil servant salaries by $2 billion. Minister Israel Katz is looking to find ways for the burden to be shared.
אני שמעתי על חברות שהתחילו לפטר, אני פונה אליהם לא לעשות את הדברים האלה. במידה וזה יקרה, אנחנו נפעל במסגרת כל האמצעים שיהיו לנו כדי למנוע את הדברים האלה ולהביא למציאות שהחברות עצמם מגלות סולידריות עם העובדים, לעבור ביחד איתם את המשבר.
And joining us with more is International Police spokesperson Mickey Rosenfeld. Mickey, always a pleasure to have you. Give us some more information though here. How are police actually enforcing the lockdowns in these cities?
Our units are on the ground in order to make sure that we're supporting the public, so there is a public awareness of the seriousness of the number of people that unfortunately have been infected by COVID-19 in those specific areas. All of that information and everything that's going on ground and taking place is due to the fact that we understand the increase mainly in those areas, and we have to do everything possible to minimize the movement of the public where they are at the moment.
All right, so how does it work, where people are where police are finding people on the streets for not wearing masks, but then, you can walk into a pub or a restaurant and sit not 3 feet away from somebody else without wearing any protection?
Well, I'm differentiating between those neighborhoods which are on complete lockdown, Ashdod, for example, certain neighborhoods there, and Lod. There is a complete lockdown, only people allowed in and out for essential reasons, of course, for food, medical assistance, etc., and official government workers that are going in and out. Across the country, apart from that, our police operations are continuing activities on the ground, working together with the public. Number one, warning the public, making sure that people realize that we are in stage 2 of COVID-19. This is the second wave, which has hit Israel more than 1,000 people per day. These are high numbers, and the numbers, unfortunately, are increasing. So therefore, the units on the ground are working in public areas, warning people, and if necessary, also giving out fines, more than 200 shekels per fine. We visited over just the weekend more than 7,000 businesses in order to make sure that people are keeping social distancing.
Now, this might sound like an odd question to you, Mickey, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly looking to bring undercover police into events like weddings to ensure that hygiene rules are obeyed. How do you bring an undercover cop to a wedding?
Well, our police units carry out regular activities, undercover activities in all different areas and in all different societies within the Israeli Arab society, within Jewish neighborhoods, within ultra-religious neighborhoods. Technically and in terms of operations and activities, that's not a problem to do. But if we reach that stage, it can be implemented. I think that we're really focusing now on public areas where thousands of people are, on the beach areas, restaurants, businesses. Those are the areas that we want to focus on in order to make sure that social distancing is being kept. And of course, masks are being worn at all times in public areas.
All right, well, if there's a relative that you don't quite recognise at your wedding, Aaron, maybe we'll think that something might be up or being watched. Thanks for that, Mickey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as cities are shut down, how effective are these partial closures when it comes to stopping the spread of the virus? So joining us with more on that is epidemiologist from the Hadassah School of Public Health at Hebrew University, Professor Chagai Levine. Professor, a pleasure to have you with us. Everyone is trying to make sense of the thinking behind these restrictions. The partial city shutdowns, are they even effective, especially when it's just 7 days?
Unfortunately, it's, even though it's based on, on evidence, on data, it's not as accurate as we want. So we need to find the right balance between the decision. 7 days, there could be extension, but we know something about the incubation period, about the virus, so it makes sense.
So what about reducing the number of people in gatherings? What difference does it make restricting the number of people, say, from 250 to 50?
Okay, I want to explain the idea. The idea is that you need to realize that any one of you or me could be a carrier. Now, with regular activity, in a regular week, maybe we meet 500 people. If we take some measures to reduce exposure of others to us by using masks, by avoiding public places, by avoiding mass weddings, etc., we can reduce this number significantly, still continue with most of our life, maybe only to 20 or 30. If we take more extreme measure, even less.
Right.
So in a public health point of view, if we reduce the places where most highest risk of transmission, like a mass gathering where people eat together, each one is
Absolutely. Well, we are seeing there are many different places that we're meeting each other in the street, in public, and of course everyone's trying to strike the right balance, but we appreciate that insight. Thank you, Professor.
Sure, be careful as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now briefly, Israel's national carrier El Al has stopped flights altogether after labor talks blew up between the pilots committee and management. 2 passengers and 4 cargo flights scheduled for Wednesday remaining grounded, leaving ticket holders in the lurch.
Travellers aren't the ones soaring, but tensions are after the airline slashed the vast majority of its workforce and dipping into its pension funds, trying to stay afloat amidst the coronavirus crisis. The airline is looking to the government to help save it from insolvency.
It's been a day now since missing the deadline to begin Israeli expansion plans for Judea and Samaria. But the government's been talking about this for years, so missing the deadline hardly means giving up. Here's more.
Down but not out. The Israeli Prime Minister might have missed the July 1 date that he'd been trying to hit to begin annexing parts of Judea and Samaria, but instead, just a statement from his office, saying talks with the United States over rolling out its peace plan will continue. From all angles, the settlers raising their voices. Prominent settlement heads, like from the Yesha and Samaria regional councils, calling out the Netanyahu-Gantz government for being all talk with no walk. On the other hand, residents of the heavily populated Ariel settlement saying they don't care much for the plan at all, and much prefer the status quo. Ariel is long discussed as the first or most likely settlement to be absorbed by Israel in any peace plan. Despite the anticlimax for settlers, though, Palestinians and the West Bank still taking to the streets in a quote-unquote day of rage.
كنا اليوم متوحدين من أجل الضفة، انضمام الضفة، وهذا لا ولا إنسان ولا واحد، لا ذكر أنثى كبير صغير شيخ ولا واحد يعني بيسمح بهذا القرار. لازم إسرائيل هي تتنازل عن هذا القرار، وبنفرطش في شبر أرض ولا في القدس، والقدس عاصمة لنا وإن شاء الله بنصلي فيها.
The Palestinians have rejected Trump's peace plan out of hand. The leadership's ethos is to establish itself in Israel's stead.
It's the time now to raise red card for this Israeli government, which is trying to lead the whole world by the nose, rejecting all the voices coming either from Israel, inside Israel, from the Arabs, Muslims, Europe, everybody except Trump and his crazy administration, and to know that here in Palestine still there is a partner, the same voice, the same commitment.
Netanyahu's office, meanwhile, promising a series of meetings on the subject, including Israel's top security brass convening for additional discussions. And the Pope, the latest to try to promote dialogue, summoning the Israeli and U.S. ambassadors to the Vatican for meetings over the annexation plans.
And joining us in studio is expert in international relations with the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, Dr. Emmanuel Navon. Doctor, a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Now, we're hearing reports now that Hamas in the Gaza Strip and Fatah of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank are vowing to unite over Israel's plans to expand over Judea and Samaria. What could this mean on the ground practically?
We've heard those rumors hundreds of times in the past 20 years, so it's really not the first time that Hamas and Fatah talk about uniting against Israel. Now, mind you, definitely they are united in the hatred of Israel, but generally the union doesn't last very long because they also hate each other, they fight each other, they really are rivals of a power, and we all remember when Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in 2007, how he dealt with the Fatah officials. So it really is not the first time that we hear this union between the two parties, and it won't last the same way that it never lasted before.
All right, now several settlement heads are comparing Netanyahu with Menachem Begin, saying that Netanyahu is just talking the talk without walking, whereas Menachem Begin actually went ahead and in a matter of a day, pushed for the annex of the Golan Heights. What makes this situation different?
Well, it was different, first of all, before and after the elections. You'll notice that Netanyahu spoke a lot about annexation ahead of the elections in March, but we're now after the elections. And as you know, politicians tend to be different before and after elections. The truth of the matter is that Netanyahu himself, over the years, and don't forget he's been altogether prime minister for 14 years, had many opportunities to try and push for some kind of at least partial annexation. And indeed, there was some pressure on him to do so. And his answer over the years was, why do I need this headache? We're building on the ground anyways. Why do I need to attract the attention of the international community? I don't think his mind has changed on that. It's just that with the announcement of the Trump plan, he wanted to get some kind of advantage before the elections. But now we see immediately when he said, okay, we're going to annex immediately, Jared Kushner immediately said, no way. And now even the Trump administration, they had this meeting a week ago. They're not sure if they want to give a green light to Israel or not. And then he has the opposition on the right from the Council of the Settlements and then from his own government. So it doesn't look good for him in order to move ahead. There's too much uncertainty. And sorry to quote myself, but I've said for the past months that nothing will happen on July 1st, and I was correct.
Right, but we've also been hearing a lot of speculation as to what was behind the delay. There has been the pointing to the fact that perhaps the Trump administration is trying to play it safe ahead of, perhaps dwindling numbers in the polls ahead of the November election. Also not enough international buy-in. But when has international buy-in, or lack thereof, ever stopped Israel or ever played into Israel's decision-making?
That's right. But the question is, what would be the advantage for Israel at this point? In other words, when Israel annexed, and you mentioned before Menachem Begin, when he annexed the Golan Heights in 1981, 1982, of course, nobody recognized it. But even the United States condemned it at the time. The question is today, if you compare the benefits and the disadvantages of such a decision, that's really what has to be taken into account by Israel. Now, you have to understand also that as far as the Trump administration is concerned, at least Jared Kushner, the main purpose of that plan really is to strengthen the ties with the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia. Nobody actually believes that there's going to be peace between Israel and the Palestinians. That's the plan talks about it, but it's not the actual purpose of the plan, and that's what we have to understand. What Jared is really trying to achieve is really to strengthen this axis of Israel and the Sunni states against Iran.
So then how then, just very briefly, is Netanyahu then going to get what he's looking for his country across the line then, trying to piggyback off the United States agenda?
But again, Netanyahu today does not need annexation anymore because we're after elections. He has his government, a shaky one indeed, but he doesn't need annexation anymore because we're past elections. So I think that really at this point Netanyahu is going to wait. Also, everybody wants to know what's going to happen in November. Netanyahu is a very cautious person, and he's very good at blaming others, and there's a long list of people he can blame for not moving ahead with this annexation, which again, I don't think will happen.
All right, Dr. Emmanuel Lebon, thank you for that insight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, forget annexations or even the coronavirus. The topic on the minds of Israel's rabbinate is training women so that they can sit for the exams as Orthodox rabbis. The chief rabbinate of Israel is threatening to strike if it's forced to provide education to women who wish to study the laws required to become a rabbi under the Orthodox faith.
Now, it comes after Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit last week told the Israeli High Court that the state will set up a parallel track, allowing women to be tested on the same material as men who take the rabbinate exams. The idea of the training, though, is not to become a rabbi per se, but rather for the status and benefits that passing the exams can bring these women, like an increase in pay in certain positions or the ability to apply for a civil service position that otherwise they wouldn't have access to, because some professions consider the rabbinical exams an equivalent to an academic degree.
But the chief rabbinate is saying it's not an institute for higher education. Its role is to certify rabbis.
Well, it's a terrible fact, but 1 in 4 Holocaust survivors in Israel live in poverty, and they're not alone. As a result of the COVID-19 outbreak, the elderly in general spend nearly all of their time at home, mostly by themselves and in run-down apartments with nobody to turn to.
So the need to eliminate hazards and obstacles relating to mobility, safety, and comfort has grown dramatically. Thankfully, the Israeli organization Latet, meaning to give, has carried out hundreds of home repairs to increase the elderly's quality of life at no cost to them.
And here to tell us all about it is Latet founder and chair Gilles Darmon. Gilles, a pleasure to have you with us.
It's a pleasure. First of all, thank you for having me today with you. As you say, it's a very painful thing that in Israel you have 1 out of 4 Holocaust survivors living in poverty. This is something that is unacceptable. So since 2007, we did many things with Latet in order to provide them assistance and bring dignity to these people, and this is what we are doing. In 2013, we understand that first things to do is to fix their home. You know, you are beyond the age of 85, 90, even more. You are with no resources, no friend, and then a simple thing to fix at home it becomes something very complex. And then we decide to enter into the home of these Holocaust survivors and to make their place a safe place. Right. And we start to adjust toilet, showers to their specific needs, to install grabs bar or ramps within the home and fix bathroom, kitchens, corridor, everything to make their home, their place where they live, a safe place too.
And what else are you offering? Because you're not only doing renovations for Holocaust survivors and for the elderly.
You're fully right. The idea is to provide them with a holistic aid, you know, providing food, providing an emergency fund. You know, when you have to deal with glasses issues, audio devices, dental treatment, you need to find someone that will help you to do so. And this is what we are doing in Latet for the last 30 years,
now,
13 years.
What about loneliness? Because we understand that is a huge factor for the elderly. You know, how does Latet help out with that?
First of all, you need to understand that our program is achieved by volunteers, and the volunteers are personnel volunteers, meaning that this is the same volunteer that are supporting the Holocaust survivor for years. It's almost to rebuild a kind of families around this couple of the Holocaust survivor and the volunteer. So there is a personal relationship that helps us to not to let them face the loneliness. If you take the example of the COVID crisis, from the first day we make make phone call to everybody.
And it's such an important service, not only to be bringing, excuse me, company to these elderly who might be by themselves, but also to be creating a beautiful environment around them. So if people want to help you help them, what can they do?
First of all, we still need volunteers. We still need people to support. We are a grassroots organization. We are not asking for help from the government. All we are doing is thanks to simple citizens in Israel, all over the world, people that are ready to help. So it's very simple. You go to the website of Latet, latet.org.il, and there you have the opportunity to or to contribute to the organization and the program, or to volunteer. This is really important, but because we need the help of everybody to do so, and especially for this program of renovation, we need people to help us.
Certainly. Well, of course, if anybody is interested in helping out this organisation, we've got the website on the screen. Thank you for that,
Thank you so much.
All right, now to start this next story, here's a quick riddle. What do you get when you cross the need for sustainable meal making with a Play-Doh-like extruder?
I don't know, Aaron, what?
Well, check this out.
Okay.
Believe it or not, this is the future of the meat industry. In just an hour, this printer by Redefine Meat can build you about 6.5 kilos or 13 pounds of fake meat.
The idea is to replace a cow. So each of our machines produce in a day exactly like a cow, up to 250 kilos in a single day.
And not just faux ground beef, as with other alternative meat products.
As far as we know, there is an amazing industry of alternative meat that is focused on mince meat. And actually, the meat industry is driven by the whole muscle cuts. Our technology can create whole muscle cuts, just as a cow can produce that, in a much more efficient way, with a lower cost, and of course, it's much better for the environment. So we are introducing a new category. We can do the entire cow, not only one part of the cow that is actually side stream. Steaks, roast, slow cooking, grilling, everything that an animal can do, we want to do the same or even better.
And best of all, it's part of a push to save the planet.
This is the biggest problem we face today as humanity, and this is the best way to fight climate change, to deliver healthier solutions and food to the entire population of the planet.
Now moving out of the lab and into the kitchen, many restaurants and hungry restaurant goers are already showing interest.
I think 3D printed meat is a really great idea. As soon as the taste will be as good as the regular meat, I will definitely try it.
Using the 3D printer for making food helps to protect the environment, protect the animals, protect by killing innocent animals. That's good. I'm looking forward to try this.
So how do they do it? Food engineer Alexei Tomzov lays it out.
We analyze the different components that make those beautiful cuts and try to figure out which are the key components that we need to mimic in order to achieve those beautiful cuts of meat. We identified three main components: the muscle, the blood, and the fat. These are the components that we need to mimic in order to reach the perfect, beautiful steak.
And using a soybean-based formula, the final product not only looks the part, but supposedly cooks and tastes like the real thing too.
At the end of the day, technology is important, but what's more interesting is to have a really delicious and tasty food product that you can cut through and have a bite and be excited.
Are you hungry, Tracy?
I am. Plant-based meat will save the world, Aaron.
I surely hope so, actually. I really do.
He's not
but
into
with
it.
that, let's take a look at the weather forecast. In Tel Aviv, a low tonight of 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 21 degrees Celsius.
In the north and the south, you'll be sweltering. The high is sitting over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Katzrin and Eilat, both Friday and Saturday. That's around 40 degrees Celsius.
And now, before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. I can't tell if he's afraid or if he's just upset that he doesn't have an instrument.
Right. Yeah, I think he's upset he doesn't have an instrument. I don't think that's the way you're supposed to dance to music, though.
I don't know, I like his moves.
All right, well, you can dance like that. We'll give you an opportunity later. All right, well, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.45 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Tracy Alexander.
And I'm Aaron Porras. See you next time.